You had a song that you were set to release that P told you not to.
Yeah, it was called Fuck Death Row.
You know, and you mentioned that kind of saved your life, though.
It did, because P was smart enough to know that I wasn't ready to go to war. I just was vigilant, and I was like, fuck that, I gotta defend my pride, but my pride would've got me killed.
Man, do you realize that saved my life? Like, Master P saved my life. I was gonna put an album out called Death Row, and Mac 10 was gonna give me $1 million to put it out. It was gonna be on Who Bangin' Records.
Everyone knows and talks about the East Coast, West Coast rivalry, but nobody pays attention to what happened after the rivalry ended. After Tupac and Biggie were killed, the rivalry came to an end, but another war began. This time not between the East and West, but this time an unending war within Death Row itself. In fact, this beef still goes on till today. This is the story of a complicated relationship that led to Snoop Dogg recording an album that could have gotten him killed. Back in the early 90s, Dr. Dre had just left NWA, and he had decided to join forces with Suge Knight to start a label called Death Row Records. It was around this time that Dre was introduced to a skinny 6'4" tall rapper from Long Beach called Snoop Dogg. Dre invited the young talent to audition for Death Row. However, Suge Knight wasn't exactly sold on this Crips member's talent, but Dr. Dre vouched for him and Snoop was signed to the label. Dre and Snoop would first work together on the soundtrack for the 1992 movie Deep Cover. This duo had undeniable chemistry. They then worked together on Dr. Dre's debut solo album, The Chronic. Snoop was the most featured artist on this album, as he appeared on about 12 tracks of the 16 songs on the album. With the success of The Chronic, no one, not even Suge, could question Snoop's talent anymore. It was now time for Snoop to release his debut album. Snoop began recording Doggy Style in early 1993, and the album was released on the 23rd of November 1993. Doggy Style sold 806,858 copies in its first week. Snoop Dogg set the record for the highest first-week sales of any hip-hop album. Doggy Style is one of the most important hip-hop albums ever. It introduced G-Funk to a mainstream audience. Snoop crafted what is known as a West Coast style in hip-hop, and during this period, he was regarded as the king of West Coast. However, despite the success they had just achieved together, Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight were never really friends. Their relationship was that of just a label owner and an artist. But that was different with another artist Suge signed in October 1995. 8 days after Suge Knight paid $1.4 million to bail him out of jail, Tupac Shakur signed with Death Row Records. Now, before Pac joined the label, Snoop was obviously the leading name and the face of the label, but that all changed after Tupac signed. He had the sex appeal, charisma, and the personality that just got so many people hooked to him. And Pac was also very successful with his music. The first album he released under Death Row, All Eyes on Me, is hip-hop's first double-disc album, and it debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200. Unlike Snoop and Suge, who were never really close, Tupac and Suge Knight had an instant connection.
Come on, man! All right! I got the bomb, bro! I got 2 apples! I got hoes! I think Biggie, bitch! Biggie here, man. Biggie here. Okay, but I did you for you, but I did you. But you told me to fuck me, bitch, so I did it.
Oh, yeah.
Why it took so long to make
It took a while, man, because, you know, once you got that much love in the studio, hey, it take a while to get it down on wax.
That's what it was?
So me and her took a while. Faith, my homegirl.
Tupac and Death Row Records CEO Suge Knight taunted Faith in front of MTV cameras, implying she and Tupac were intimately involved.
I just want to send a shout out to Faith. Hey, girl, Faith and Bad Boy Records.
After Tupac signed, you could say Snoop Dogg became the third wheel in this relationship. Perhaps the reason why Suge and Snoop were never really close is because Suge is a member of the Bloods, while Snoop belongs to the Crips. On the other hand, Tupac and Snoop were actually good friends, and going by the moments they shared, you could tell they genuinely had fun together.
Snoop, did you find yourself after the trial, like in the studio, trying to get some stuff done? Or?
You know what? My people from Death Row, they took me out of town, you know what I'm saying? To release my mind. That's something I really needed, you know what I'm saying? I had fun in the water. I went to the water, I was in the sky, me and Tupac was like 30 feet in the air.
However, Pac and Snoop's bromance didn't last for long. When the East Coast-West Coast rivalry began, Snoop refused to choose a side and even did an interview with BET where he stated that Biggie is his homeboy and that he had no beef with him.
Biggie Smalls, he's an artist that I listen to his music, I love his work. There's no beef, it's nothing personal. I don't hate him and I don't disrespect him and I love what he do, you know what I'm saying? And it's just me, I'm just a smooth, peaceful individual. I don't have beef with nobody right now, baby.
You could see this as Snoop Dogg just wanted peace and no part in beef. But Tupac saw this as betrayal, and the relationship went south after this. This is one of the reasons why Snoop wasn't in Vegas on the night Pac was killed. The relationship between the three had gotten so bad that on their last flight together, Snoop claimed that he was ready to stab either Pac or even Suge Knight.
Pac right here, a couple other right here. I'm like, what's up, Pac? And they do me like this. So I walk to the back of the plane, give me a blanket, grab me a knife and a fork, put the blanket over my nose right here, my little black glasses on, and ride like this the whole flight, hoping one of them come with me so I could stab out everybody on this mother. This is a 5.5-hour flight. Don't nobody say one word to me. Not one word. Just having conversations and doing all kinds of things, saying nothing to me. Now we land. My Rolls Royce, Tupac Rolls Royce, Suge Rolls Royce. We step off the plane. I'm like, Pac, you going to Vegas to the fight? I said, pfft. That's the last time I seen my live.
Unfortunately, Tupac was shot on the 7th of September and he passed away on the 13th of September, 1996. After Pac died, Death Row pretty much imploded. Snoop's biggest ally, Dr. Dre, had left the label months before Pac got killed, and Suge was sent to jail just 45 days after Pac's death. So the label had no direction. Suge was then sentenced to 9 years in prison in February 1997. By now, everyone knew Suge Knight and Snoop Dogg were beefing, as they were both going at each other. Snoop Dogg even released a diss track against Suge called Pimp Slapped.
Play it for him. This nigga's a bitch like his wife. Suge Knight's a bitch and that's on my life.
This was a very difficult time for Snoop. Yes, he was a multi-platinum artist, but he was also broke and just getting by during this period. He was still signed to Death Row, but he was getting no money. Snoop then decided to go from a diss track to a diss album. He was offered $1 million by Mac 10 to release the album on Who Bangin' Records. But just before the album was released, Master P and No Limit Records came into the picture. Snoop Dogg did a record with No Limit rapper Mystical. Master P asked how much he wanted to be paid, and Snoop said 15, which means he expected to be paid $1,500. But when Snoop Dogg returned the next day, Master P wrote him a check of $35,000, which left Snoop quite amazed.
Come back the next day, Master P wrote me a check for $35,000. So I'm like, oh, I like this style.
Master P then called Snoop into his office and asked him if he was working on any music. Snoop told Master P that he was about to release the album called Fuck Death Row. Master P closed the door to his office and gave Snoop Dogg one of his realest moments. He said to Snoop, "You ain't gonna live to see that album out." Master P convinced Snoop to not release the album, as he believed it would have gotten him killed because he knew just how dangerous Suge Knight could be.
He called me to his office. He said, "What you working on?" I said, "I got this album called Death Row. This motherfucker hard." He like, "Hold on, bro." He closed the door. And I'm like, "Man, you ain't gonna live to see that album come out." He said, "Don't do that, bro. You can't make no record talking about Death Row and Suge, man. You gotta let that go, man." He said, let me make an offer to you. Let me make a proposal to you. My own boy Marvin Watkins, rest in peace.
Song that you were set to release that P told you not to.
Yeah, it was called Fuck Death Row.
You know, and you mentioned that kind of saved your life, though.
It did, because P was smart enough to know that I wasn't ready to go to war. I just was vigilant, and I was like, fuck that, I gotta defend my pride, but my pride would've got me killed.
Ironically, various sources stated that some of Snoop Dogg's best works were on the Death Row diss album. Master P also wanted to sign Suge to No Limit. He stated that he went to Mule Creek State Prison to negotiate Snoop Dogg's release from his Death Row contract. Master P claims that he paid millions of dollars before Suge Knight agreed to let Snoop leave Death Row. However, according to Suge, this isn't exactly what happened. Suge stated that rather than Master P visiting him in prison or paying him money to let Snoop go, he did a deal and loaned Snoop services to Priority Records. And it was Priority Records who then allowed Snoop to sign with No Limit and Master P.
I did a deal with Brian Turner at Priority Records, loaned Snoop's services to Priority and gave him the right to loan it to No Limit.
So you've got to wonder, who is giving us Fugazi? Suge Knight and Snoop Dogg's beef continued even after he signed with No Limit Records. The duo diss each other every chance they get, with Suge stating that Snoop was no longer a superstar.
Suge Knight recently said he used to be a superstar and now he's just a No Limit soldier. What do you say to that?
Nothing. He used to be a CEO, now he's just an inmate.
Till today, Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight don't get along, especially after Snoop Dogg bought Death Row Records. And with Suge Knight now running his own Collect Call podcast, you can be sure that this beef isn't coming to an end anytime soon.